Hello everyone. Today's mathematics masterclass is all about undefined fractions. Relax yourself and enjoy the class. First, let's talk about undefined fractions. A fraction 3 over 0 is undefined because of the 0 in the denominator. Or a fraction 5 over x, if x is equals to 0, it means this fraction is undefined. So undefined fraction is all about the denominator of the fraction. For instance, if you have over x plus 1, it then means that if this fraction is undefined, it means that x plus 1 is equals to 0. So x now is equals to minus 1. At a value when x is minus 1, this fraction is undefined. Remember, if you have x, 7 over minus 1 plus 1, minus 1 plus 1 is 0. So you now have 7 over 0. As long as we have 0 in the denominator, that fraction is undefined. So undefined fraction is all about the denominator of the fraction. If the denominator of a fraction is 0, that fraction is undefined. So let's look at example 1. Find the value of x for which these expressions are undefined. So let's start with A, when we have 3x plus 2 all over x plus 7. Now this should be equal to, since this fraction is all about undefined, we'll only pick the denominator of this fraction, which is x plus 7. Then we'll now equate it to 0. So this will be equal to, or this implies that x will now be equal to minus 7. So if x is minus 7, if you substitute for this in the original equation, remember the value that will make this fraction undefined is minus 7. So this is the answer. But if you go back to the original expression, when we have 3x plus 2 over, remember so we have x plus 7, and now minus 7 plus 7. So this will give us 3x plus 2 all over 0. So as long as the denominator of the fraction is 0, that fraction is undefined. Therefore, at a value when x is equals to minus 7, the fraction is undefined. Let's look at B. So B, we have 6x minus 1 all over x squared minus 8x minus 20. So now, if we are looking for a value at which this expression is undefined, so we'll pick the denominator of this fraction, and that implies that x squared minus 8x minus 20, it will be equal to 0. We only pick the denominator. Don't forget, you have nothing to do with the numerator of the fraction. It is about the denominator. So this implies that we are going to factorize this. So the factorization of this, we have 20 there. 20. The factors of 20 are 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. So the two factors that will give us minus 8 and minus 20 is minus 10 and 2. Minus 10 and 2. So minus 10 and 2 will give us, because 2 minus 10 will give us minus 8. And 2 times minus 10 will give us minus 20. So the factors are x plus 2, then x minus 10 is equals to 0. So the denominator of this fraction, if it's being factorized, it will become x plus 2 and x minus 10. So this implies that x plus 2 now will be equal to 0, or x minus 10 equal to 0. So x now will be equal to minus 2, or x is equals to 10. So at a value when x is equals to minus 2, or x equals to 10, this fraction is undefined. So this is our final answer. Let's consider more difficult examples. Example 2. We have x squared plus 12x plus 36 all over s squared minus 3x minus 10. Now, because it's undefined fraction, we are dealing with the denominator. So what we do now, we'll factorize only the denominator. Forget about the numerator. So this will be equal to the factorization of the denominator. We have 10 there. The factors of 10 are 1 and 10, 2 and 5. So which of these factors will give us minus 3 when we add them? And when we multiply the two factors again, it will give us minus 10. The two factors is minus 5 and 2. 2 minus 5 will give us minus 3. And 2 times minus 5 will give us so we'll come back here again, and let's assume we rewrite this fraction as x squared plus 12x plus 36 all over x plus 2, then x minus 5. So because it's undefined fraction, we are going to equate the denominator to 0. That is, x plus 2 times x minus 5 will be equal to 0. So it then means that x plus 2 is equals to 0, or x minus 5 is equals to 0. So this also implies that x is equals to minus 2, or x is equals to 5. Our final answer, therefore, is x is equals to minus 2, or x equals to 5. So at this value when x is minus 2 or x is plus 5, this fraction is undefined. So take note of that. Let's consider example 2. So let's look at the B part of this. The B part will have 18 over x plus s squared plus 1 all over s squared minus 9. So since it's undefined fraction, we are more concerned about the denominator. So let's first of all factorize the denominator of this fraction, so that we now have 18 over x plus s squared plus 1 all over. The factorization of this is x minus 3 and then x plus 3. That is the difference of two squares. Undefined fraction, you must understand what factorization is all about. So at this point, now this is fractions, addition of fractions. So we have to look for the denominator, the LCM of this fraction. The LCM of this fraction. So this implies that if you are looking for the LCM of this fraction, it will be x minus 3 and then x plus 3. So this is the LCM of this fraction that is going to form the denominator of this. So if you like, you can express the numerator, but you don't need it. So if this x go into the denominator here, we are going to have 18 times x minus 3 and then x plus 3 plus the whole of this if the denominator here and we are going to the denominator here, we're going to have x times s squared plus 1. So you don't need to expand anything here because you don't need it. What you need is the denominator. So you have gotten it. So the next one is to equate the denominator to 0. That is x, open bracket, x minus 3, and then x plus 3 is equals to 0. Therefore, we now have our x here to be equals to 0, or x minus 3 to be equal to 0, or x plus 4 to be equal to 0. So this also implies that our x is equals to 0, or x is equals to 3, or x equals to minus 3. Our final answer, therefore, we now have x equals to 0, or x equals to plus or minus 3. So this is our final answer. And at these three values, this fraction will be undefined. If here x is 0 here, this fraction is undefined. And if x is plus or minus 3 here, this fraction also will be undefined. So this is what undefined fractions is all about. Now let's look at a more difficult example. Example 3. Find the value of s for which this expression is undefined. Undefined is the same thing as not defined. So sometimes you hear, well, what value of s is this fraction not defined? But this time now we are saying undefined. So it's the same thing. So the first thing, like I said, is to factorize the denominators here. So is to factorize the denominators here. So the factorization of this, we have 5. The two factors of 5, let's bring out 5. Factors of 5 is 1 and 5 because it's a prime number. So since we have plus here, it means 1 must be negative. 5 minus 1. 5 minus 1 will give us 4. And minus 1 times 5 will give us minus 5. So that is the factorization. We can rewrite it as s squared plus 10 all over x minus 1, then x plus 5. That is the factorization of this. Minus, we are going to factorize this one too. We have 15 there. We have 15 there. So we are going to bring out the factors of 15. 15, the first factor is 1. The last factor is 15. That is 1 into 15 is 15. The next factor is 3. 3 into 15 is 5. There's no other factor again. So we are going to consider which of these two factors will give us plus 8. And if we multiply them, it will give us minus 15. Plus 8, it means we are going to have plus 3 plus 15. I mean plus 3 plus 5. Plus 3 plus 5 is the factor. So we come here, we write 2x minus 1 all over x plus 3 and then x plus 5. So these are the two factors that will give us this value. So the next thing now is to look for the LCM of this fraction. And you know that the LCM of this fraction is now we have x minus 1 here. We don't have it here. So we'll write it down. X minus 1, open bracket. We have x plus 3 here. We don't have it here. We'll also write it down. X plus 3. So we have x plus 5 here. And we also have x plus 5 here. So it means they are common. We'll pick one. X plus 5. So this is the denominator of this fraction. Take note of that, the denominator of this fraction. That is the LCM of the two fractions. So the LCM of the denominators of the two fractions. So this is what we have. Now, if you like, you can use, remember, if the denominator of this fraction come to divide this their common LCM, we'll be left with this one alone. So we'll now have x plus 3 to times x squared plus 10 minus, likewise here, x plus 3 and into bracket x plus 5. You go into this one, we'll be left with x minus 1 to multiply 2x minus 1. So we'll just form this numerator, but we are not going to use it. Next step is to equate the the denominator to 0, which is this value. We are going to equate it to 0. That is x minus 1 times x plus 3 times x plus 5 is equal to 0. So it then means that x minus 1 is equal to 0, or x plus 3 is equal to 0, or x plus 5 is equal to 0. So this implies that x is equal to 1, or x equals to minus 3, or x equals to minus 5. Therefore, x is equals to 1, or x is equals to minus 3, or x equals to minus 5 is the final answer to this. These are the values at which this fraction will be undefined. At these three values, these fractions will be undefined. Thank you very much for listening to me. So anytime you are dealing with undefined fractions, just know that you are dealing with the denominator of that fraction. And that denominator, you will equate it to 0. But remember, if they say the fraction is undefined, it is not the whole of the fraction that is equals to 0. It is the denominator that is equals to 0. What do I mean by that? If we are looking for a value, for instance, we have x plus 3 all over x minus 10. And you are asked to find the value at which this fraction is undefined. You cannot say that this is equal to 0. No, it is not the entire expression that is equal to 0. It is the denominator that is equal to 0. So take note of that. Take note of that. It is the denominator of the fraction that is equal to 0, not the entire fraction. In this case, what you should have written is x minus 10 is equals to 0, not the whole of this fraction equal to 0. Thank you, and God bless you.